Good morning, fellow hat nerds. Welcome to the next installment of Hat Chat. I am your host, Luke. Just trying to take care of to make sure that this stream is actually going live before we get underway. Let's see here. Okay, yes, I believe we are live. Excellent. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Again, this is now just over a week's worth of content here. Right, I've been roughly doing one of these live streams per day, and yeah, I've been having a lot of fun. So I'm gonna try to keep this going. Like I said, the idea behind this, at least the implementation behind this, has been creating one of these live streams per day. But that probably won't hold. I don't know if my energy levels could sustain a daily hat chat, or just besides my energy, just my schedule. But for now, I'm able to do these daily. But I'd be just fine if we got a weekly segment, or what have you. I just feel like after my walks every day, I've been able to kind of get these streams out, and so I'm doing that. So it just happens to be daily right now. So like I mentioned, this is kind of a living thing, a thing that will evolve over time as I start getting more viewers, and you might be able to hear my cat screaming in the background. But yeah, for the most part, I feel like we've already had at least 3 engagements with my fellow hat nerds. In the I guess 7 past live streams that we've done. I'm already pleased as punch with that. If this channel happens to grow, that's great. If it doesn't, and if I'm able to get 3 hat nerd engagements per week, I'm gonna be just fine. So we'll just keep that going. And so I'm now officially off of my pot of coffee, and I moved on to my fizzy drink phase of the day. This happens to be a Bellevue blackberry flavor. Again, if you've seen my past live streams, I get these from Aldi. They're cheap and they do the trick. And I guess they're supposed to be hydrating. Remember, like part of the coinciding with this channel's creation has been my kind of renewal of my dedication towards trying to make healthier choices, and live a healthier lifestyle, even if it's just a little bit, right? So that's where the walking comes in. That's where this format comes in, because I love hats and I love interacting with my fellow hat nerds. So hopefully the compendium of all these little changes happens to be an improved and more fulfilled life. It's kind of a new beginning. I just moved in. I guess we moved in last week. So it's been a little over a week in this new place. This is kind of like my new office domain. But this is not going to be the final form. Maybe it is going to be the final form. Who knows? But right now, as I mentioned before, I have all my hats in a room adjacent, and I feel like I need them here with me, at least some of them here with me, besides the one I have on my head. So I have some of my photos in here already. I think I showed you the Rocky photo yesterday, and I talked about the Rat Pack photo. I might as well just show you that. And this is the Rat Pack photo. It's I believe this is like from Robin and the Seven Hoods. So I believe that's the movie. If you know otherwise, then let me know. It's been a while since I've seen that movie. But that is when I saw this, I had to have it. Kind of just like my hats. I just figured I need to see this around me. In addition to my hats, the Rat Pack. I mean, you can see here you got Dino right there. I guess on the far right, if that holds for you guys, the viewer. I'm gonna try to do this without getting the reflections. But you got Dino on the right. You got, of course, old Blue Eyes Frank Sinatra in the middle, and then you got Sammy Davis Jr. wearing the bowler, right? And I think this was the movie that we had the song "A Hat's Not a Hat Till It's Tilted," but I could be wrong. Again, I'm no expert on the Rat Pack and the Rat Pack movies. I am a fan of Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin. But yeah, lots of good music, but probably by today's standard, considered a pretty cheesy movie. But this photo, I feel like this photo just screamed iconic. Again, in terms of theme, in terms of hat collection, my hat collecting theme is probably not as set as kind of my my photograph theme, right? They are hat related. Um, that's all. That's essentially the sort of three photos that I had. I had the Rocky photo, this photo, and the big old Michael Corleone in Sicily photo, which were staples in my last office. These will probably end up going right back up. I just need to figure out where they're going to live. I don't know if I'll have them on screen. I don't know any of that stuff. Maybe one of these days I'll come back from my walk and I'll get a bug in my bonnet about hanging these up, and I'll know exactly where. So we'll see. But yeah, this is my one of my three main hat photos that I kind of have in there, and maybe I'll have more as I start like venturing out and seeing what's available out there. I don't know. I know it when I see it, right? So all these happen to be things that I just happen to be browsing around at a store, I don't know, thrift shop, or basically anywhere. And I saw it, and I said, I have to have that. So, and if you tuned in because of the thumbnail, or because of the advertisement, you can kind of see the hat of the day is a Berg Lord's hat. Now, this is something that, talk about learning every day. I had no idea when I got this hat that it was a Lord's hat, right? For those folks that kind of are new to the hat game, the Lord's hat is kind of, and again, I'm going to speak off of what I know, not necessarily fact. It's just what Luke thinks is. So folks that come in here either in the middle of the stream or sometime afterward that can correct anything I say, I have no problem with that. I just ultimately want the correct information in the hands of our audience. So a Lord's hat is very, very similar, and to what's known as a Hamburg. So if you tuned into our last two shows, you would see that I wore two Hamburgs, right? So I started off with the Moores Hamburg, I believe, which Moores is a UK brand. And then I believe yesterday I wore my Dobbs 15 Hamburg. That was a gray one. And this I thought was another Hamburg. And there was several things that kind of, when I saw this for sale, I said I had to have it, right? One, because I just really loved Hamburgs. So I was like, okay, that's another Hamburg. Yeah, let's do it. Right. And then the other thing that caught my eye was the color, right? The color, the color is kind of like a cognac color. Let me actually remove this. You can pardon my messy hair, but I don't know if it comes across. I'll try to do this in such a way that you can see and I don't like cause catastrophe here with the camera. So as you can see, you can definitely kind of see where the mistake, for Hamburg, is and lies. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But as far as I know, this might come across more brown, but it's what I refer to as cognac or rum colored, depending on, again, how accurate. I have no idea how accurate that is. I'm calling it cognac for lack, until I get new information. So yeah, so the cognac color, really drew my eye. I'm like, okay, that's a Hamburg. Again, didn't not knowing what kind of hat this was. I said, well, that's a Hamburg that I definitely want to have in my collection because, well, that color just jumps out at you. Um, and I guess the other thing that kind of jumped out at me was the fact that this was a Berg hat. Um, I had not come across at that point any Berg hats, right? In my research, in my viewing on the Fedora Lounge, and also in my looks like we have a viewer. Welcome. I was just talking about the Berg Lord's hat. That's the hat of the day that I'm wearing. Hey, Morgan. No worries. Things had gotten unexpected. Hey, no worries. Like I said, I mentioned this in the follow-up post on the on Facebook. You were the highlight of the stream, so I really appreciate when you poke your head in and you drop a comment. That's so helpful because, like I said, uh, really all this. I'll sit here and I'll talk, and I'll talk because you've already seen me in action. But I much rather have a dialogue. You know, like that the hat of the day is really kind of just a straw man to start conversations and maybe get me on topic on some kind of topic, but it won't mean I'll stay there. So I hope you had a great day, and I hope you're having a fabulous morning over in New York City. Not a problem. Hey, forget about it. That's right. Donnie, forget about it. I love all gangster movies. I mean, some more than others, but Donnie Brasco is definitely one of my favorites. I actually, when I post about it on Facebook, I get so many quote unquote experts. He's like, oh, I knew the real Lefty, and I'm not. I don't. Well, one, I didn't care. I mean, I guess that's kind of cool. I'm like, and they were like, yeah, Al Pacino had it way off. That the real Lefty would have been caught dead in a hat. And I'm like, I'm like, okay. I mean, first of all, I don't care because I think Al Pacino killed it in the movie. Second of all, I will tell you that, and I mentioned this on a past live stream. We have several former members of organized crime, of particularly the Italian organized crime, that knew the real Lefty. So I mentioned Michael Francesi, whose dad, Sonny Francesi, was a captain with the Colombo family in New York. Michael was also a captain. So I think him and his dad actually were captains around the same time. His dad was the one that kind of ushered him and kind of schooled him in the life. But Michael, and who, again, everybody like has different opinions about Michael because they call him, they say he was a rat and all this stuff. I'm like, I don't care. Michael's channel is a wealth is a wealth of information. He's by all means a gentleman, and I don't really think he's somebody that tells a lot of tall tales. And one of the things that he talks about, and he talks about how accurate that Al Pacino's portrayal of Lefty Ruggiero was. I believe that was his last name. I believe it was Lefty Guns or Lefty Ruggiero. Again, anyway, Al Pacino's character, because Michael actually knew the real Lefty. So again, you hear, I don't know, like obviously they're both figures in the internet, but one's a well-known, like established figure that lived the life. The others are kind of like a bunch of names on Facebook. For me, if they're opposing opinions, I'm kind of inclined to believe what Michael says because again, it's verified that he was a member of that life, and he was, what's called a capo, a captain in that life. So for a major family. So again, it doesn't matter, regardless of how true and accurate the movie was. And we know there are some inaccuracies. That's what any movie. It doesn't matter. Like everything is dramatized for a reason. When the writers and the directors and producers get their mitts on something, they're gonna take creative liberties. Like every movie is not meant to be like these. That's why the difference between a movie and, let's say, a biopic versus a documentary, right? With documentaries, you would probably fault something like that, right? It's like, well, documentaries to me are meant to be real life portrayals. Biopics are somewhere in the middle, right? You know that every biopic that's out there is not always full with factual information. There, in the end, a lot of folks that are the target, are the focal point of those biopics, they're not the ones making that movie. There's a whole creative industry, like a movie studio, a director, a producer, and what have you, that have input into what goes into the biopic. So they're going to sometimes stray away, and they'll do it sometimes on purpose, not because they want to lie. It's because the story sound, the movie is going to sell more tickets that way. But again, Donnie Brasco is based. That's what they always say, based on true events. Doesn't mean that everything you see there actually happened or happened the way they say it's happened. And I'm like, so when people go off on these things like, oh yeah, that was just complete, nonsense. The real lefty was not. Who cares? Al Pacino killed it, right? I mean, what do you think, Morgan? What do you think of Donnie Brasco? I mean, I'm assuming that's what you were referring to when you said forget about it. That's how I always think. If somebody says forget about it, I automatically think Donnie Brasco, and that goes to show you right there how powerful that movie is. I mean, just an iconic role. I mean, Johnny Depp, I think, is a great. Now, again, do I think Johnny Depp was the only person that could have played Donnie? No, no, I do not. I think he did a great job, but Al Pacino killed it, and Michael Madsen, who played Sonny Black, killed it. Like Michael Madsen, who just recently passed away, he played Sonny Black in that movie, and he absolutely murdered that role. Like basically, like essentially how Michael Madsen typically does in a lot of the movies that he's in. I think in Kill Bill, he kind of stole the show as Bill's brother. And obviously Reservoir Dogs. Sorry, was it Reservoir Dogs? Yeah, I think I got that right. Reservoir Dogs. He was the guy that cut off the ear. I forget what Mister he was. It might have been Mr. Pink. But yeah, he killed it. Like he just is one of those guys that like I think Michael Madsen is probably one of those like modern day James Dean types of actors. And he's probably not going to get appreciated until long after. Maybe now that he's no longer with us, but by all means, he's one of those guys that everybody like took his characters to heart. And everybody that knows him said he was one of the super nicest guys you could ever meet. And not just super nice, but super thoughtful. That's something I hear about certain actors, like let's say Keanu Reeves, where everybody's kind of like, like the early Keanu Reeves movies. The guy played like, the Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. He was kind of like an airhead because he had long hair, and he's like, but Keanu Reeves is a super thoughtful dude. If you see any of his interviews, you kind of know that guy's got a lot going on up there. So I feel like Michael Madsen was the same. I think he got into publishing poetry, after his acting career kind of went, started sliding a little bit. And but was somebody that was, I think, if I'm understanding and my quoting accurate, I think he was somebody that always was into poetry. He just did it like acting was his main thing. So Donnie Brasco, excellent movie. Again, I don't know if I'll ever start like getting into like movie reviews. I feel like that's kind of that's done ad nauseum here on YouTube. So I don't want to just repeat what everybody else is doing. Michael Franchese has a really good section. He does Mob Movie Monday. And again, I think he stopped because there's only so many movies you can watch. I think he's kind of reviewed all the major ones. But it's interesting to see from a real life former member of organized crime what these movies and how realistic they are, and the things that remind him about that life. I think that's where you get the most value because it really kind of hits home that the writers, producers, and what have you, the folks that created the movie, they really got it right. And of course, they'll tell you what they got wrong. And again, Michael, I love Michael's content because he doesn't let that stop him from really loving the movie. And if you are interested, his all-time most accurate and best movie, I think, in terms of portraying that life, for him, I think he said Gotti, the original Gotti movie, not the one with John Travolta. He said the original HBO, I think it was HBO produced, that had Armand Assante playing John Gotti, was for him one of his favorite movies, and I think for him one of the most accurate movies about portraying that life. So if you're somebody like me that's kind of interested, not because you're trying to glamorize that life, I don't glamorize that life, not at all. Um, but I just see that life as a continuation of like the kids that get into gangs, and they do it because they're seeking family. Either way, I think it's good cinema. It is, it has varying degrees of accuracy. Yeah, but I think Godfather Part 2 is probably my favorite. So just in case you want, I think Godfather Part 2, obviously the original Godfather, A Bronx Tale, Donnie Brasco, and I'll probably throw Gotti in there as well. And I'm sure there are others that I'm forgetting. Actually, The Irishman. You know, The Irishman is full of debunked things. It doesn't mean it's not a fantastic movie. It's probably, for me, the greatest recent mob movie that we have seen. And again, I can't think of a better one that's in recent times. I think that one came out in 2019. It was actually a movie that Joe Pesci came out of retirement for. It just shows you how big it was for him to get out of retirement, and he killed it. He killed it. Anyhow, back to the hat of the day. I forget where we're at, but the Berg Lord's hat, right? So we talked about one. The color struck me. It's what I refer to as cognac. Rum color, I don't know, what have you. It just not, to me, it doesn't scream brown as much as I say cognac. So right there, what I thought when I saw it, it was like, okay, this is a cognac Hamburg. The second thing was it was by Berg. When I looked at the photos and I'm looking at the hat, I'm like, I've never seen another Berg hat. In doing the research, I realized that Berg was another brand that was part of the big U.S. conglomerate, Hat Corporation of America. It just, for some reason, was a lesser known brand. I don't know where it stood, right? So like a lot of these sister brands, they'll have like tiers. I never really got a handle if there was a tier system, right? So maybe Dobbs or Kavanaugh or Knox were higher tiers than, let's say, Berg, or some of the other sister brands. But Berg was definitely one that's part of that conglomerate. So I'm like, okay, that already has some kind of credibility. It's part of like that New York connection. And then lastly, what the last pull was something, again, I had no idea about when I got the hat, is that this is not a Hamburg. In New York terms, it ain't a Hamburg. It is a Lord's hat. And what's the difference? I guess, well, Hamburg, I think in terms of countries, Hamburg, I believe the tie is to Germany. I'm trying to remember if I think it was Bad Hamburg, Germany. I could be mistaken, maybe it's Austria, but I think it's Germany. Those are the roots of the Hamburg, and everybody, well, I'll say everybody, but more people know the Hamburg style than the Lord's hat style, right? So you have kind of like this extended stiff brim, like the stiffness of the hat and the stiffness of the brim, right? So this is a hat you don't flip down. At least I'm not gonna. I have no idea. I've actually read that Lord's hats, Another distinction is that they're more soft, more of a soft felt. So a lot of times they just get called fedoras, so that you can flip this down. This, when I'm doing it, when I'm kind of touching this, it feels very, very stiff, and it doesn't lend itself to be turned down. I do not want to mess up the hat, so I'm not turning it down. Second of all, I don't like my hats turned down. I don't like flipping the lid down. It's just not my style. I feel like this is more my style. Anyhow, there were a couple things, right? I got the hat. I was pleased as punch. I'm like, I got a cognac Hamburg from Berg. I wonder. And I'm looking through some the Fedora Lounge forums. I can count probably on one hand how many Bergs I saw, and I'm like, well, the first thing I noticed was there was no dedicated thread for Berg hats. And if you're on the Fedora Lounge, you can kind of know that we try to give like these clever names. You have the Borsellino Brotherhood. That's one that you will see. That's like a living thread, really old, has lots of posts. There's one for like every major hat brand, and even like a lot of niche hat brands. What I did not see when this was probably a little over a year ago, was a dedicated thread for Berg. And so I started one. So that was my little contribution to the Fedora Lounge, which is like amazing to me. I'm like, that for me is, if that's not an advertisement for folks that are new to the hobby, and they think it's all been done and like there's no new knowledge to add, like what can I do? Like that right there for me was an accomplishment, because again, I know Berg hats have existed and I know that if they've been posted about, but nobody thought to start a dedicated thread to the Fedora Lounge, and that place has been around. So I went ahead, and to show off my what I thought was my Berg Hamburg, I started a thread called the Berg Ballroom. So the Berg Ballroom still exists. It just doesn't have a lot of contributions yet. I believe there have been only like a couple posts to the Berg Ballroom, since I started it, or maybe somebody else just decided that there was already a better thread. It could have been that I thought that there was no existing thread, but one existed. Either way, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, if it didn't exist, it exists now because I posted a thread about it. And so I make the thread, to show off my Berg Cognac Hamburg. And then that just kind of begs the question, because I'm looking at it and I'm comparing it to my actual Hamburgs. I think at that time I might have only had the Dobbs, the one that I sold to the gentleman in Utah. At that time, I might have only had the Dobbs Golden Coach Hamburg from the 60s. So I was comparing it. I'm like, wow, what do you think is the first thing that I noticed that that was different? Well, the first thing I noticed, besides the fact that this one just seemed really stiff. I'm like, I don't know if it came from the factory that way, or somebody's like steamed it and like put some kind of hairspray, but it definitely is a stiff hat. It was even much stiffer than the Dobbs Hamburg that I had. Remember, if you tuned into my stream, I believe it was yesterday, I was talking about this again. Sorry, I know I've only had a few episodes, but they're all kind of, all my episodes are already like jumbled in my head. I believe yesterday I was talking about that Dobbs 15, not 15, the Dobbs Golden Coach Hamburg that I sold to the gentleman in Utah. So I'm looking at it, I'm like, at that point, I just got this. I had that Dobbs Golden Coach Hamburg. That Golden Coach was very pliable, right? When I got that Golden Coach, it was unbashed. So it looked kind of like a Hamburg Bowler hybrid, right? But I saw that the felt was really pliable. So I just did a quick center bash. Remember, I talked about like my style of if it's a pliable felt and it doesn't have a shape, almost always I'll do a center bash. I'll do the Luke Karate Chop center bash, and I'll start off that way. And then eventually I will go and probably do like these front dents. And I think that might have been where I got the inspiration. I said, okay, so this has already been formed. It's not going anywhere. It's already been steamed. So I said, okay, my Hamburg, my Dobbs Hamburg is going to get the front dents in addition to its center dent. And then I started looking. I'm like, holy cow! This Berg Hamburg doesn't have any edge binding. That's weird. I thought all Hamburgs had that edge binding. And it turned out that that was it. That was at least the first clue that got me thinking I need to look up, do some more research. And sure enough, on the Fedora Lounge and some other websites, I found out that there was such a thing called as a Lord's hat. So again, the Hamburgs are based in Germany. Don't quote me on that. It could be Austria, but I think they're bad. It's Bad Hamburg, Germany, is the origins of the Hamburg. But the Lord's hat, you could probably guess, originates in the UK. So it really is like, I think, the UK's version of the Hamburg. And there are other distinguishing factors, right? That may or may not apply. But I think the one thing that will clue you in, and I'll go real close for better or worse here, you can see that there's no edge binding on this hat. It's just smooth felt. So if you go back into into the past two live streams that I've done of my Moors Hamburg and my gray Dobbs 15 Hamburg, you will see very clearly that there is an edge binding on those two hats. But on this Lord's hat, it's just not bound. It's just a raw binding. I believe that's the term. It's just a raw binding or raw edge. And that right there was the major clue. And you see, I didn't even go and edit my original post. I kind of just left my mistake there. What I did was I actually followed up my post and said, you know what? On second thought, this is likely not a Hamburg at all, like I thought it was, and like I thought it was when I bought the hat. I believe I have an example of a Lord's hat. So that just was icing on the cake. Again, that was like for me the trifecta of this hat. Like, and it's probably why I've stuck with this hat for as long as I've had it. I'm not trying to get rid of it. Even though it probably doesn't look I don't know. You can tell me. I don't think it looks as good on me as some of my other hats. But I do really love this hat, if only because of that trifecta, right? It's cognac colored. It's a hat, a Berg hat, a genuine Berg hat from the Hat Corporation of America, and I just don't come across those very often. If you know otherwise, and why we don't come across them, I don't know if it was just a poor seller, or what have you. I don't know the whole story. So obviously, I try to do as much of my history and look up as much of my history as I can, but I don't know why we don't see as many Bergs, as let's say Dobbs or Knox or Kavanaugh's. By all means, it was a sister brand. I think 1864 is what's stamped in here. So like a rich hat history. It could have been that John Kavanaugh in his saw that Bergs weren't selling well. Maybe in terms of the positioning, he saw that that the Berg hat line wasn't a big seller, and he didn't have a way to kind of really market it, and decided to stop producing it. Again, I have no data on this. I'm merely kind of speculating, kind of like I mentioned yesterday when I talked about what happens when I don't know the story behind the hat. All I do is I look at the hat and I'm like, I start trying to create that story in my mind of what the hat probably went through. Only because, like I said, I think human beings we're natural storytellers, right? Right? We human beings do not like not knowing, right? I think that's an evolutionary tactic of we don't like the fact we're kind of have that cognitive dissonance in psychological terms of, hey, I don't know this, but I'll create a story around it, and I'll even tell the story, right? So that's kind of the function here. It's like I'm telling a story, you're hearing the story. You could be like, "That makes sense, Luke," or "Luke, you're full of shit." Sorry to curse, but you could be like, "I that's a bunch of malarkey." Either because I have a better story, or I don't have a story at all. I just know the truth because I know this stuff. This is what happened with Berg. This is why you don't see Bergs that often. But to me, it just makes intuitive sense that if you had a hat line from a major corporation, major conglomerate like Hat Corporation of America, there's got to be a reason you don't see that many examples of it. Maybe it was just something where they again just a poor seller that maybe was even dropped. I think you see that with other conglomerates in other industries like the automobile industry, like with GM, right? When General Motors had Chevy, Oldsmobile, Buick, Saturn, Pontiac, they had all these brands. Chevrolet, obviously, I forgot that one, but I should have. They had all these brands at some point, and they had themes, right? They had like right, Pontiac was the more sports oriented GM brand, and then you had Buick, which was like entry level luxury. Then of course you had Cadillac, which was actual luxury. But at some point, the marketers and the bean counters get together, and they're like, why do we have why are we kind of cannibalizing our own sales by putting out product that's just not it can't stand on its own. And I can't help but think that that might have happened with Berg and maybe some of the other sister brands that are not that from the Hat Corporation of America that I can't come up with right now, because I can't think of them. But yeah, I guess that's my question for the folks in the know that are watching this or that will watch this at a later point in time. What happened with Berg? Why don't we see a lot more Bergs? Um, I know the gentleman that goes by Blair. I think that's his screen name on Fedora Lounge. Blair has just a ridiculous collection of hats. It's just fantastic. But he also has a Berg, at least one Berg that I know of, because he posted it in that Berg ballroom. And yeah, it looks like a lot older than mine, the Berg that he posted. And I'm curious, maybe Blair sees this one day, or somebody that knows Blair and can kind of he can poke his head in here and just drop a comment and just say, hey, what happened with Berg? And that goes for all the more seasoned hat nerds that that roam the Fedora Lounge. Again, I'm super fascinated, and I want to learn more about this brand. I love the hat. Nothing will change my perception of this hat. I still love it, regardless of whether it's not one of the mainstream brands. Actually, I love it because of that. I think for my collection, it fills in a niche that none of my other hats. I'm looking at my hat. I look at my hat collection. I'm like, okay, I could have done without that. I never look at this hat and say, I could have done without that hat. I made the right purchase when I got this hat. I always I get the same feeling, I guess. Again, even though it's not something that I wear as often as some of my other, I'm gonna just call them my knockaround hats or my more of my favorites per se in terms of wear. This is just one of those that like, okay, there's no other hat that occupies the same space as this hat. So it's a keeper for me. I mean, again, I have no idea if that's a good rule, a good rubric to kind of you know you to guide my hat journey by, but I know that it is something that probably is something that's used by my fellow hat nerds, right? It's like when you got a hat that there's no overlap with, you're more inclined to keep it, even if you don't wear it. Again, and I know that there's so many folks out there that have hat collections that never wear their hats. They wouldn't think of it because like it's their baby, right? It's like the car, the garage queen. They refer to it in the car world. where they're like they put it in the hat box, they go and they clean it, so right, you take your hat brush, maybe you steam it, and then you maybe take photos of it, maybe for the Fedora Lounge or for your Facebook group. But now I never wear it. I'm like, I can't believe it. Don't even think about it. But they're meant to be worn. I mean, again, I dig it. I dig your theme and the way you go about your collection, because for you they're showpieces, right? Like they make you, at least we get the same feeling, right? So like me wearing it and me seeing it is the same as you just owning it. But like for me, I can't, like I the whole point of me getting into these into the hat hobby, the fine hat hobby, was to wear these hats. And when I don't wear them, that's when I start thinking of it, just like getting rid of them, because I'm like, maybe that hat would be worn by somebody else who have, like I mentioned yesterday, a better home, and that's cool. Like I love the idea that somebody else wants it more than I do, um, and they would give it a better home, right? It's just like rehoming a pet. Um, you love that pet, and you really hate to to have to like rehome the pet. You hate to do without the pet because it become a member of your family. But you know that if you can no longer give that pet a great home, they're not getting the exercise or the whatever they need to really live a good life, then that's when you kind of feel that obligation um, to rehome it, right? To find a better home for it, and then you start, like, if you really really care about the pet, then you will not just let it go to any old home, right? You would want to know that and have verifiable proof, some kind of objective evidence. I don't go that far, right? I'm not going to be like, you know, answer these three questions about hats to tell me that you're going to give this hat a good home. I don't do that. I mean, I feel like nobody would want to deal with me if I was going to do that. But it is the idea, right? So the idea is that I'm going to release this, you know, this this beauty onto another home, and they will hopefully love it even just as much or even more than I love it, because they are want it, right? They want it more. They're willing to pay money for it, and maybe even travel to meet me to go get it, or pay postage. Like they're willing to pay priority postage to be able to have this hat in their possession, and I respect that. I don't really care if you don't wear the hat. I mean, I'd like you to wear it, but that's only because, I'm me. But yeah, I would love to see a bunch of more folks posting photos of them wearing their hat, and not just the fact that they wear it once to take a photo and take a selfie. That's a whole other ball of wax. But that they wear it out and about on their daily business, right? I mean, again, I've seen folks, at the airport, in a variety of hats. They're not always like a fine hat, Sometimes they might have a straw hat, and I think that for me, I think straw hats, especially the genuinely weaved straw hats, not like the cheapy one that I got in Croatia. I think the legitimate straw hats, Kappa's makes a great one. Borsalino made a great hat. A lot of these really fine straw hats, these Panama hats, I guess that. Let me just refer to them how I think they probably better referred to as the Panama hats, which coincidentally did not originate in Panama. I believe the origin of the Panama hat is Ecuador. Who'd have thought, right? Like, that again, don't know any more than that. Somebody that's more knowledgeable than me can probably opine, and tell me, and tell the viewers, especially the newer folks that might come across this channel, why are Panama hats referred to as Panama hats when they originated um, in Ecuador? Again, I'm assuming that is correct. I believe that is correct. Yeah, fact check me if you can. Again, I don't mind being corrected, but Yeah, I always thought that was fascinating. I'm like, how did it get the name Panama? It could just be that even though it was originated, this is me storytelling again. It could be that even though um, Panama has originated in Ecuador, they could have just been a bit. There could have been a bigger rise when they got to Panama from Ecuador, right? So when Panamanians got a hold of it, it just became more marketable. Like it got pushed out that this is a Panama hat, and it stuck, right? It doesn't matter who created it, right? It kind of like it's all automatically usually a thing of who made it more famous. And that's I think probably kind of like the thing with these shirts, right? I mean, I always call these Cuban style because, as far as I am aware of, this Guayabera style shirt originated in Cuba. I could be wrong about that, but it definitely spread to Dominican Republic and to Puerto Rico, Mexico, and even the Philippines. And probably I'm missing a bunch of other cultures that rock a similar style embroidery type of style of shirt. Yeah, and the Filipinos have a different name for it. I think the Mexicans have a different name for it. I know the Dominicans do. The Dominican Republic refers to these as chacabanas, which I just think is probably, if not just as fun or more fun to say than guayabera. I think guayabera is a pretty fun word to say. It's kind of like almost a little bit of a tongue twister. Um, but Chacabana, you can't beat like Chacabana. Chacabana sounds something like you want to eat. It sounds like some sort of mythical creature, like the chupacabra. Um, uh, yeah, I'm like, yeah. I went outside and I saw it, and I saw a Chacabana. And they're like, no way, you're crazy. No, the Chacabanas don't exist. And he was like, no, I swear, I saw a Chacabana. Like it feels like one of those names. Like it's probably like I call those Smurf words, right? Those words that just feel like they can be used for multiple things and it sounds right. You know, I can't think of other examples other than like Smurf. That's Smurfy. But so I call them a Smurf word. So anybody that grew up in the '80s watching the Smurfs like I did, um, whether that's a term or not, it's a term that I use. So maybe that could be our own nomenclature here. I was like, oh, that's just like a Smurf word. Chacabana. Yeah, yeah. I had myself a delicious Chacabana. Um, sounds like a great drink too, right? I'm like, I'm just sipping on a Chacabana. What about you? Anyway, I digress. So yeah, we just gave you the backstory again, the provenance of the Lord's hat. Um, I just figured that I spent the entire weekend, so the two streams I did this weekend, these two segments of Hat Chat, talking about my two Hamburgs that I own. I don't think I own any other Hamburgs. Like I said, I had a third, and that one got sold to and got rehomed. And yeah, I just like, okay, what better way to follow up the two Hamburgs than with a actual Lord's hat? And I'm hoping that I'm not just like blowing smoke and like this is actually a Hamburg and somebody like actually I'm thinking this is actually a Lord's hat from based on everything that I know. If if somehow I find new information that contradicts that, and maybe it's some sort of third hat, it's like it's not a Lord's hat or a Hamburg. It's a XYZ. I would just do another follow up video and say, hey, mea culpa. I was wrong. I've wronged you by giving you bad information. Please accept my humble apology, and I will, as a special makeup gift, I will let you listen to the other kind of rant I have at the moment. I don't know. It's a gift and a curse. The gift and the curse they keep on giving. Um, Anyhow, yeah, hat of the day, the Berg Lord's hat. One thing I did notice that with the Bergs, with this particular Berg hat, right? So um, besides the fact that it's a Berg hat founded in 1864. There we go. I got it now. 1864. So you can see it's one thing. I'll see if I can do this so that you guys can see. It has, I don't know, I'm going to butcher this, but it says it has a cashmere finish. That's something that I've seen with other hat brands. And my guess is that the finish has to do with the sweatband here. As you can see, this hat is, I've worn this hat a decent amount, not like as much as some of my knockaround hats, but it's in tremendous shape. Like this hat looked like when I bought this hat, I don't think it was ever worn. That's again probably a fourth thing that kind of said I had to have this hat. You can see it kind of left a little bit of a hat imprint on my forehead, which is okay. Just a hat wearing war wound. The other thing I wanted to kind of show about the hat was you can see the young men's shop in Easton, Maryland. I am in the DC metro area. Easton, Maryland is not very far from me. I got this hat locally and I was tickled that it could have actually been just a local purchase from the young men's hat shop. Again, I have no idea. I'm going to assume, just like a lot of these hats, that they are no longer in business. I'm usually when I get these hats, I'm just gonna try. Sometimes the glare kind of ruins. So I'm just gonna do that. That way, you get a little flavor of, the sweatband, the emblem underneath. You can see it has one of the little plastic sleeves. I forget the term for that. There's a term, and I'm forgetting it. But it has the little plastic thing kind of to protect. So, a little history on that. The origin of that feature, that little plastic, I'm just going to call it a little plastic sleeve. It might come to me what it's actually called, and you guys can correct me. But the origin of that is kind of coinciding with the change in style of the domestic. So this is the domestic hat, right? So it's from the Hat Corporation of America. At some point, men's hairstyle started shifting towards having product in the hair. We talked about the Kennedy administration. Kennedy definitely was a someone that had product in his hair. I couldn't tell you when that started. I don't have that kind of historical knowledge. I do know that this feature in fine hats was in direct response to the product that men were putting into their hair to style their hair. It just so happened that people were complaining. I'm sure they were complaining and asking for, or when they did their research, they found out that that product was somehow staining the lining of the hats, the fine hats that were being produced and worn day to day by hat consumers. So in response, the fine hat industry started developing hats that had this plastic sleeve that was to protect the lining of your fine hat from this product. I thought that's genius. I mean, like that right there is a really cool feature, and I'm sure it's I know it's widely used for dating. Like that little plastic sleeve for, again, I can't remember what it's called. It's definitely plastic, and I'm just gonna call it a sleeve for lack of a better term. That little plastic protective film or sleeve was functional. Like they had a functional use, and it was to protect the lining of the hat from the hair product that probably, who knows, like that, the hair products that people probably were using back in the day, back in those days, probably are banned today. They might have been like toxic. And to think that this is just something that we found out now is toxic, kind of like remember the term Mad Hatter? And I believe the term Mad Hatter was because the mercury that was used in making hats by hatters also drove them crazy. Like it was a toxic product. And they just didn't know any better, or they didn't care. I'm sure they kind of like probably people that still smoke now, that probably was the thing, like, yeah, that doesn't really, do I look like somebody that's crazy? I'm like, like, yes, you do, but I'm not going to tell you until I walk away. But yeah, the term Mad Hatter was because hatters were exposed to this toxic mercury in such quantity. Again, I think it's mercury. I could be wrong, but I'm going to say mercury. But yeah, they were exposed to such high levels of this mercury in the process of their craft, in crafting these hats, that they were driven mad. I mean, it really messed up their, I guess it had an adverse impact on their brain. Um, and that gave rise to the term the Mad Hatter, right? It's kind of like probably similar to something like going postal. Um, I'm like, it just became synonymous with, it just became part of our language. And obviously, I think we saw Alice in Wonderland, where we actually had a character called the Mad Hatter. Um, so yeah, again, I don't know how I got onto this. I guess I got onto that topic with the protective sleeve, but yeah, it was a functional. It became a functional feature, and I think at some point they stopped doing it when like maybe product got a little easier. Some hats probably kept doing it. Again, it became something that was a direct response to a need by the hat consumer, by the hat industry, and I thought that was really cool. And luckily, it also became a another way for folks that really want to drill down on the history of the hat to kind of tell you what era that hat came from, right? Um, like before that time, you didn't see plastic hat sleeves or linings or whatever lining protectors. It was only I think up until the 50s or maybe the late 50s that you started seeing that, and that just makes intuitive sense. I have no idea if it's accurate, but usually when you see that, people start saying, "Okay, 50s or 60s." That was like the heyday of the plastic lining. And Yeah, it just made sense with like things like the Kennedy administration. We saw that that was a man that had product in his hair. And Yeah, I just thought it was really cool that that was a kind of a feature. I'll talk about another feature in future hat videos. I just don't want to kind of go into it and kind of steal my own thunder. But yeah, right now we have, I think this video in particular was really helpful, I think, for those folks that might come across this hat and may have never heard the term Lord's hat. I think some folks, I mean, even the Hamburg is something that's new for a lot of new hat folks, right? They're like, I have seen a lot of folks misclassify the Humber, and that's not a problem, and hopefully, like when somebody that comes along and corrects them, that they don't take offense. I know when I try to apply correction, it's not meant as a "What are you, an idiot?" It's only meant for you to like not be misinformed. That way, when you're talking about your hat to somebody else that may know even less, or what have you, or you want to share your hat hobby, you can kind of say, hey, with a degree of confidence, either because good Luke said it or somebody else said it that may have a little bit of knowledge. That this is a Hamburg, this is a Lord's hat, this is just standard fedora, this is a bowler. Because I think that if you spend any amount of time on the forums, Facebook groups, and what have you, wherever you get your hat content, you will see that there are varying degrees, and that's okay. I think when you learn it, my hope is that you're able to pay that forward, and then maybe because at some point you may start off as a new or newbie or whatever the term is, a new hat hobby person, but you will become a more seasoned hat person over time as you start collecting more, as you start interacting with fellow hat nerds, and just becoming a connoisseur of the history and of the product, and you become a fan. And, fanboy, maybe not fanboy. Fanboy is probably has negative connotations. I would try to take the positive of it as somebody that's a Borsalino fanboy, a Stetson fanboy. Those are iconic brands, and I could understand why somebody would be a fanboy of them. Also, it provides, like I say, if I'm only collecting Borsalino and I only collect Stetson, there's utility in that, right? So maybe you recognize, at least hopefully it's not something where it's like, if you don't have a Borsalino or if you don't have a Stetson, it's crap. I don't like that. I don't do that, and I don't like seeing that because, geez, I mean, a hat is, if you love it, then I love it. I mean, even if I don't actually love it, if you love it, I can love the fact that you love it, and I think that's how it should be. I think there's a lot of that elitism that exists. I know it exists in the watch community because I've seen it firsthand. I know it exists in hat communities because I've experienced it firsthand. I don't want to. Maybe one day I'll go into some of those examples. I don't want to. I don't like talking about bad stuff. Those are like those are the dark side. I see it in the Linux community as well. I don't like it. I think it's another form of bullying, and I don't condone it. And I won't condone it on my channel. And if I see it, even in another forum, I might just put a stop to it because it's silly. It's like, my hat's better than your hat is just very grade school, and it doesn't do well for it doesn't set a good example for the hat community. Like, we're a small community as it is. We don't want to be we don't want to have that negative connotation. And if it's something that you've been guilty of doing, it's never too late to stop doing that, because what do you hope to gain by that? Like, I guess that the only thing you can gain by that is maybe potentially feeling better about yourself, that you're some sort of better hat person than somebody else. Um, there's a great quote that, wow, I don't even know if I can remember the origin of it. It could be a Hemingway quote. I could be wrong, but it's like, I don't, there's no nobility in being better than your fellow man. The true nobility lies in being better than your former self. And I think there's a very powerful message in that I think could pay dividends to a lot of folks, not just in our community, but mankind in general. So yeah, I think if you see that, or if you actually are guilty of doing that, I understand, but you're not doing any favors to yourself. You're certainly not doing any favors to your fellow hobbyists, that all we want is to interact and to have a good place, a safe place, an inviting place for fellow hat nerds as well as future hat nerds. And there's no place in that. My hope only is that if if that does still exist, that it's just a drop in the bucket and doesn't color our community and paint us in a bad way, that we scare off potential new members, because that'd be outrageous. That'd be a travesty. You were literally single-handedly killing the hobby by doing that kind of stuff, and there's too much of that already that exists, and we don't need any more of it. So, just a little bit of a soapbox rant. I am a little bit over an hour into this live stream. We did have Morgan Brown come back. Thank you, Morgan. There's no problem with you dropping by and just saying hi, or even if you don't have time to do that. I appreciate you. Thanks for coming on and joining us, and thanks for subscribing. I think you did subscribe. I really appreciate that. We just had a new somebody that's just joined, so I won't leave. But yeah, I was just getting on a soapbox about like bullying in the hack community. Just I don't know. I can only call it bullying. I don't know if that's something that you guys have experienced. I know I've experienced it. It's just somebody that goes, and because they have more hats than you, or they think they have better hats than you, trying to, like, I guess, talk down to you. Maybe they're one of the, like, I think I tend to see it more in like the vintage elitist. I'm like, I love your hats. I don't like your attitude. You know what I mean? Like, we don't need that kind of stuff in this community. I mean, if you've experienced that, then definitely I'd love to hear your your take on that. I just think it just goes to like this idea of, in psychology you call it getting ahead versus getting along, right? Um, and it gets back to like I had a little segment on one of my past live streams that talked about the three master motives, right? That they talk about in psychology, and they have need for affiliation, um, and also need for achievement and need for power, right? The three master motives, and they can kind of sometimes lead to this very same behavior. And I feel like the bullying and the elitism that we see, and luckily it's only a very small amount. I definitely, there's way many more good folk out there, thank goodness, in this hack community than the curmudgeons, the bullies, the elitists. But I gotta tend to think that they all stem from those, some sort of abusive levels of all of those. They think that they're achieving something by putting somebody else down. They think that they're getting ahead of those folks by saying, "Hey, my hat's better than your hat," um, and it actually runs counter. I think they're actually thinking that they're doing some sort of solid by saying, "Hey, um, you're getting along with somebody. Maybe you're getting along with some other fellow elitist by putting down somebody else's hat, or somebody else's style or somebody else's whatever." And maybe it's a power trip thing. Maybe that gets into that need for power. But I don't like it. If I see it here, because I have the ability to moderate, I will either suspend you from joining on here, maybe temporarily, if I think it's something that can be rectified. I will address it somehow, some way, because I'll even address it, if I see it happening on something like the Fedora Lounge, even though I'm not an admin there. I just don't think it's cool. I don't want it, and I don't want to like just see it happening and then walk away. It's kind of like, I'm kind of a big believer, if this, like, if you see something, say something. Because you never know. Like I said, you never know who's on the receiving end of that vitriol, and we can't tolerate that. We cannot tolerate that kind of stuff. I'm a big believer in free speech, but there's just no necessity to go into that kind of back and forth. And I will engage, like, it's depending on the mood. Like I said, if I am a direct component, I will engage. Like, I don't always walk away. I try to like be the better person and just walk away. But when they catch me on the right mood, I will engage with those folks, and just let them know it's not appreciated, and it's stupid. Anyway, just a kind of a little bit of a rant. I guess now that I'm in rant mode, I'll just kind of close also with the fact that I have continued to be blocked by certain Facebook groups. Completely understand. So I think I got blocked from one or more groups by advertising this very stream, right? I think I got a message from a gentleman who was an admin on one of the groups, and said that they were going to block me because they considered my stream advertising. I mean, yes, it is advertising. I'm not trying to gain money here, per se. I'm trying to get followers, and I'm trying to directly hint at my community. But it was in all purposes, it was a very nice message. I would have probably liked to have received the message before I've been blocked. So for anybody that finds this stream afterwards, one, mea culpa, and I apologize for not having asked permission. I think that would probably be the most appropriate fashion. But at the same time, just to kind of give you a line into my thinking, is that, if I'm accepted into a forum to post content, hat-related content, then I don't see the difference. I don't see the difference between me posting a photo of me wearing this hat and me posting a link where you can get to talk to me in real time about my hat that I would otherwise post a photo of. I was like, I can see the difference, but I don't see the difference, if that makes any sense. So if any of you that happen to see this and catch the stream, later on, when it gets posted to YouTube. If you are an admin and you've seen mine, you've been thinking about that, first just drop me a line, and then second, I preemptively apologize for not having sought permission to do that. I have a member of a lot of different groups. If I had to go to every single group and formally ask for permission, one, I never get my stream advertised. I just there's too many factors there that I didn't want to wait on. So yeah. So if you blocked me and you've seen this and you want to reconsider, just drop me a message. I think I'm a pretty sensible guy, and if you made the right meaning, you believe. I am okay with agree to disagree, and you say, well, we don't allow that content. That's cool. My MO usually is going to be to leave the group only because it's kind of like with my hats. I'm a member probably of too many groups. So I kind of have the luxury of like not posting to every single group. And that's okay. I am okay. Like it's your group, your rules. I'm just trying. I think this content is beneficial to whoever might see it, especially newer folks into the hobby. And yeah, if this applies to you, drop me a line. I am cool with whatever you decide. I think I will just as preemptively tell you that I'll probably just leave the group. Again, not under bitter terms. And I will that way because when I leave the group, I will probably be less likely to post by mistake, right? Because I have when I'm sending these things out in the morning, I just go and I try to hit up all the groups I post. This like when I go back on hopefully tomorrow, Tuesday, I will post to every group that I posted to on today. So if I leave your group, hopefully it'll be memorable enough that I will remember not to post on it by mistake again. And then over time, it will show me, Facebook will show me, hey, Luke, you haven't posted here in a week. And that will be my clue not to post in there, and like because I had left your group. And continue advocating for hats. But I do kind of like wish that this wasn't like I really wish that my content wasn't flagged. That's just run of the mill advertising because it's not. I mean, it is, but it's not. I think I see the distinction, but I feel like my content doesn't fall into that traditional advertising. But that's maybe just me. Everybody has an opinion. Anywho, I think this is a good time. I don't have anybody viewing. I think it's a good time to just call it a day. I had Morgan on here, like I mentioned. Thank you, Morgan. I appreciate it. You're always welcome, even if you don't stay. And we talked about the Berg's hat, the Berg's Lord's hat, which is the hat of the day. And until the next hat chat, this is Luke signing off, and I welcome you to stay hatting. Thank you, and you have a great day.